Forbes just had a really great article come out called 10 Ways Nonprofit Leaders Can Boost Their Team's Current Skill Sets. We're going to take a look at that and share our thoughts on it.
Hi, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because a better world needs healthier nonprofits. We really like this article. This is found on Forbes. The link will be below if you want to take a look at it. But we love the idea of helping your team grow, investing in their learning, and helping people all across an organization actually grow and improve both in leadership and whatever other areas of their lives. Because really, within a nonprofit, yes, we're trying to help the people who we're trying to help through the cause, but we also have the opportunity to help the people who work with us, who volunteer with us, and who lead under our leadership. So let's jump into it. We're going to go through all 10 of these. We're going to keep each one brief.
Really quick. So number one, invest in staff growth regardless of cost. This is such an important thing that I think a lot of nonprofit leaders forget, that their most valuable asset is often the team around them. And if they can just take what has already been sorted and they've got a team around them, staff around them, they've already sorted through to find this great team of people. If they can learn how to invest in them and say, you know what? Yeah, it costs $100 for you to go to this conference, but we're going to pay for it. Or we're going to pay for you to be able to fly out and spend time in a similar organization. You just spend time hanging out with their team for a little while to just learn. Investing in staff growth, buying books, courses, things to be able to make those staff members become better at what they do is worth just about any cost that you could pay for.
Yeah. You're increasing skills really, really quickly. A lot of times when you're paying for these resources, you're actually just speeding up the learning curve, and you're making it so that instead of it taking your staff member 12 to 24 to 36 months to figure something out, they can go somewhere, learn it, implement it immediately, and actually jump ahead multiple steps. And so the payoff for this within your organization is likely going to be large. Now, it says regardless of cost, and I'm sure as a nonprofit leader, there are some things that you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. But just because something costs something doesn't mean you have to go with the thing that's the most expensive. So it is a thing where you want to consider cost, but that can't be the only decision-making aspect of it. If something is high value with a lower cost, lower being subjective, like you need to really consider that it might be worth it and maybe moving some funds around from other areas so that you can get the outcome that you need.
I've seen in some organizations too, their money costs aren't too important to them. They're like, yeah, we could afford to send you, but we can't afford for you to be gone. You have to factor in, like, if this staff member is going to be gone for a week, learning and actually bringing back super valuable information that they're going to implement. They have been proven to implement really great strategies and stuff in the past. It's worth figuring out how to make the organization work without them for a week, to have them come back. And what's great about that is, while it seems like on the surface you're losing a resource for a week as you send out a staff member to go on a learning trip or whatever, they're actually you're going to find ways to bolster up the support structures underneath them, because if it's working without them there for a week, that means when they come back, they have a little bit of margin where they can now implement some of the stuff that they have learned.
Yeah. Number 2, establish a learning culture. This starts at the top, but also starts in the middle of the organization. So if you want the people who are volunteering or leading, or even staff members under you, to be learning, you need to be a learning leader. This has to be something that is just a part of it. And it's not, we're going to be a learning culture, read a book. Culture is something that is pervasive and it's constantly there. And so it needs to come up consistently within conversations.
A really cool idea they outline in this article is an idea of a lunch and share event, where you just encourage people like, hey, we want you to be learning something that's going to help you better yourself as a staff member or a team member in this organization. And, next week we're going to do a lunch and share. We're going to have some food made or whatever. And the point of that lunch is to get together, hang out, and share what we've been learning with each other, just with the people at your table.
Yep. A really easy way to implement this is to have a lunch and just have it be a potluck. There's one organization that's just bring your leftovers, not like the old leftovers, but just make a little bit extra food the night before, bring what you have. There'll be enough for everyone. And then we're going to talk about whatever book we read or video everyone agreed to watch or whatever it might be. Number 3, start an internal mentorship program. Oh my gosh, there are so many people in your organization who know how to do things that other people don't know how to do. If you can teach your leaders to mentor, not just lead, but actually mentor the people under them and pass on their skills, you're going to end up with leaders who have duplicated and triplicated themselves to a point where they're able to grow in leadership and their teams are going to function better because not every skill will be on their shoulders.
Yeah, we talk about training a lot in some of our materials that we work with nonprofits, and mentorship is a huge part of that. It's one of the easiest ways to teach somebody something is to couple them up with a mentor. And what's cool about this in the nonprofit space is you can flip it around a little bit. Sometimes volunteers can actually mentor the staff. That was something that I did in the past. We had a really technically savvy volunteer who just loved the organization, but they had a full-time job. They weren't able to be on staff. We were like, we would love to have this person on staff, but instead, would you be willing to come in for 5 hours a week for the next 5 weeks and mentor our staff members and teach them the skills that you know? And the person was like, I am so excited about that. I am on board with that. I love this organization. I would love to pass on some of the knowledge that I have. And so just making use of that is a really, really smart idea.
Yep. Number 4, maximizing board engagement. So this might look different depending on your board and your bylaws, but there are lots of ways that you can get your board to actually engage in your organization. And sometimes people just expect the board to just sit there and be on the side, kind of overseeing stuff. But even board members who are a little bit removed, a lot of times still have resources and networks that if you can get them to engage, there's a reason that you view them as the smart people who are helping. You're like, as a leader, I'm going to go to you and submit to your authority and show what our organization is doing, get your input. They're probably connected to some fantastic people. And if you can get them to just engage a little bit more, your network of skilled people and people who are trusted resources can grow really, really quickly.
One of the ways you can engage your board members is just to get to know them and know what really inspires them and gets them excited about your organization. And then help them to use that inspiration and excitement in a way that you're not trying to pull them along, but instead they're jumping at the bit, chomping at the bit, trying to actually use those skills and the things that they're passionate about inside the organization.
Yeah. Number 5, use social media. So this is specifically not about your organization blasting stuff about your organization on social media.
Yeah, this isn't a marketing thing.
It's not a marketing thing. This is about using social media posts and articles and stuff out there as a way to start learning things that could be useful for your organization. There are some great articles that end up being shared. And what's nice about social media is if you see the same article shared multiple times, it's kind of already curated and vetted. And so you can start to see like this one might be worth checking into and just looking at. And so you can find some great stuff on there too.
Yeah, encouraging people to join groups of people who are in similar positions as them, looking up. We've done some Reddit article reviews. Sometimes some really interesting thoughts come in there. You might just want to warn people a little bit that sometimes there might be bad ideas in there too, just like there are good ideas. And so just help them to discern and learn how to sort unhelpful information from helpful information,
right?
And to challenge thought process and to challenge their own thought process.
Yep. And with these two, there are groups for pretty much any position within an organization across social media or different types of organizations. And so if they can get connected with a group that has people kind of all over the country or all over the world that are experiencing similar things, what's great is that person within your organization is going to have someone to learn from for their role, and they're not going to feel as alone. Because nonprofit leaders oftentimes feel like they're on an island, and even within the organization, it can feel very lonely because you don't generally have multiple staff members all dedicated to one department. Usually one department has one staff members and a ton of volunteers. And so there's not as much of the same type of community. That staff member can't go to their volunteers and be like, man, this work is hard because it's just not healthy.
So number 6 says explore local opportunities. And then they say the best resource is always your local resources. That's not true. But great resources are likely just around the corner from you. And what's nice about that is you can network a little bit. You can get to know some other people And so local resources might not have always the best information, but they do have other opportunities there to grow your skill set and to make connections with people who are in your area.
Yeah, if you have a question about like the legality of something, the number of board members you need, your bylaws, whatever that might be, yes, your local resources are best. There's a reason that we don't say how many board members you need to have because each state is different. Different countries are set differently.
And we're not
There's a
lawyers.
bunch of different places. But yeah, explore local resources. I would disagree with this one a little bit. Not always the best, but it might be depending on what question you're trying to get answered.
Absolutely. Number 7, leverage the expertise of librarians. I was like, okay.
Maybe. I will say a lot of libraries have access to certain other resources that they pay for that normally you'd have to pay for on your own through their own like intranet. And if you log in there, you can get access to things that normally you'd have to pay for that are free simply because you have a library card. And those are great. Also the books and stuff.
Yep. And they might have access to things that, since you're a nonprofit, you might actually have access through the library to access seminars for free and low-cost leadership stuff specifically for nonprofits. So what's great about libraries is that they do spend their time kind of curating a lot of resources. And so if you are somebody who just always looks up stuff online and is always looking at online resources and you want to break out of that mold and maybe see if something that you haven't thought of is out there, that's a really great way to kind of break out of your mold.
Yeah. Number 8, provide a list of community organizations. This is really great. Specifically, they're talking about like Rotary clubs, Toastmasters, different groups, Scouts. But specifically, there are different ways that the people who work with you can develop skills outside of your organization. And so there are different even like networking groups or community groups that kind of get together and volunteer within the community where maybe there's different points where if someone wants to learn how to speak, they can actually get the ability to learn by joining different community organizations that maybe at every meeting you get a chance to share a little bit about why you're there, what you're doing. This is one of the big reasons that I even ever learned how to speak in front of people because I was terrified. I went from being scared to speak in front of 10 people to being comfortable to speak in front of thousands of people. And it's simply because I got involved in a community organization that required me to speak just a little bit at a time. And so if you have people within your organization that you're like, you could be really great at helping us grow, but you need to learn how to speak a little bit better and how to communicate our organization's vision a little bit more succinctly. These are great ways to put them in a situation where they have to have these conversations. And in real time, they're getting the feedback. When they explain your organization, someone looks at them and says, but what do you do? They'll try something different and they'll try something different. Eventually, they'll be able to get better at communicating very clearly what your organizational value is.
I mean, as a leader, you know that this is true, that so much of learning is done in the crucible of the actual having to do it in front of people. And so encouraging them to get out of a book or out of an online resource or out of watching videos on YouTube, although I am partial to videos on YouTube that help people grow, getting them out into the real world and joining some of these membership-based organizations can really, really help them grow very quickly.
Yes.
9 is encourage volunteer opportunities. So encouraging them not to just be part of a group like Toastmasters or whatever, but encouraging them to actually go and volunteer for a different organization. They can learn a lot of really great things, a lot of little tricks, and just sort of see the inside. They're also really good at teaching them things that like they shouldn't do. Because you see a lot of things as a volunteer where you're like, wow, I don't like the way that that's run. And sometimes knowing what not to do is just as valuable as knowing what to do.
Yeah, this is something that Ted and I, when we have someone come to us and say they want to start a nonprofit or they want to start a different arm of their nonprofit or another program, we strongly suggest finding a nonprofit in the area who is doing something similar-ish and going and seeing if you can volunteer with them. I'm not saying do this like all sneakily as a spy. It's okay to go to the leader and say, I'm looking at doing something kind of similar. Would you be fine with me volunteering whatever it is you have for me to do a couple hours a week for however many weeks? most of the time they're going to say yes, because nonprofit leaders want to be able to make an impact in the world, and they know generally that expanding that is going to be beneficial. But it's a great way to very quickly learn, here's what I need to do, here's what I need to avoid, and it can save you a lot of steps in learning. And the real experience is going to help way more than trying to read a book about that particular area.
Absolutely. And then speaking of books, number 10, have employees share helpful resources with each other. And what's cool about this is instead of having those employees take a position of like, I am the authority and I'm going to teach it to you, you can kind of bypass that piece and just have them to be able to go directly to the source. Hey, I read this really awesome book. Oh, what's it about? Here, I'll just give you a copy. You read it, then they can hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yep. This is really big. Yes, depending on the employee, you want to make sure that they understand that what works for their aspect of the organization might not be applicable to everyone. Mm-hmm. But there are so many great books out there. And if you have someone who is just excelling or succeeding at their area, ask them what books they've read or what has helped them get to that place, and see if they'd be willing to share like their top 3 resources with people. And give a quick, like, this one helped me with volunteerism. This one helped me with this other area. This one helped me on the technical side. And just see what might come out. Because if they've already read the books and they know the ones that are the most impactful, they're going to have a real, a better ability to look at your organization and say, these are the resources that have been good in general. These other ones, these ones help me specifically within this culture and this community.
Yeah, like a really great example would be, you as a nonprofit leader turning to your team and saying, hey, I found this really awesome YouTube channel called Nonprofit Growth Tips that is really helpful for our organization. You might want to check out some of their videos and some of the stuff that you might find helpful for your team. Just an example. I mean, no. But anyway, if this has got your head kind of like your gears turning in your head and thinking a little bit more about your teams and ways that you want to grow your teams, we actually have a video called 6 Strategies to Grow a Healthy Team that talks about team health. We were just talking about team skills, but actually team health and making sure that you have longevity. Go ahead and check that video out, and we'll see you over there.